There's a car that hasn't been in full production in its most celebrated form for over 2 decades. Its engine hasn't been manufactured since 2002. And yet, right now, someone in a garage somewhere, maybe it's midnight, maybe there's a single work light hanging overhead, is pulling apart a 2JZ and putting it back together better than it was before. Not because they have to, because they can't imagine not doing it. That's not obsession. That's something more interesting. That's identity. The Toyota Supra is one of the most psychologically loaded objects in modern car culture. And the people who orbit it, who own them, build them, study them, dream about them, are worth understanding. Not because they're extreme, but because they're not. The Supra fan represents something universal about how humans form identity through mastery, struggle, and the pursuit of earned performance. This is a film about that psychology. The A80 Toyota Supra was introduced in 1993. By conventional automotive benchmarks, it was already exceptional, a twin-turbocharged inline-six engine producing around 320 horsepower from the factory, a sophisticated suspension setup, and build quality that reflected Toyota's obsessive engineering culture. But what made the A80 legendary wasn't what it was out of the box. It was what it could become. The 2JZ GTE engine, the heart of the turbocharged variant, became something close to a myth. Engineers and tuners discovered that the block could absorb extraordinary amounts of power with minimal internal modification. Cars that left the factory at 320 horsepower were being pushed to 600, 700, 1,000 horsepower, not because owners were reckless. Because the engineering margins built into that engine were so generous, so deliberately overbuilt, that it practically invited exploration. This was a platform for mastery, and that distinction matters enormously. In the late 1990s, car culture was shifting. The import tuner movement was exploding across North America, Japan, and Europe. Young men who had grown up watching motorsport and wrenching on whatever they could afford were discovering that Japanese sports cars weren't just affordable, they were transformable. The Supra, the Skyline, the RX-7, these became canvases. The culture that formed around them wasn't just about going fast. It was about understanding, modifying, and improving complex mechanical systems through skill and persistence. Then, in 2001, a film put a bright orange Supra in front of a global audience. The Fast and the Furious was, by any critical measure, not a documentary. But it functioned as one for an entire generation. The car it featured, a beaten-down shell rebuilt into something formidable, wasn't just a prop. It was a narrative about transformation through mechanical intelligence. The car as metaphor, the wrench as tool of self-definition. For millions of people between the ages of 15 and 25, that image landed hard. It told them that the machine you build says something true about who you are. That's not shallow. That's how cultural artifacts work. To understand why the Supra resonates so deeply, it helps to understand something about how human motivation operates at a fundamental level. Psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan spent decades developing what became known as self-determination theory, the idea that human beings have 3 core psychological needs: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. When all 3 are met, people report deep engagement, satisfaction, and meaning. The Supra and its surrounding culture satisfies all 3 simultaneously, and it does so in a way that few consumer products can. Competence. Building or modifying a turbocharged engine is genuinely difficult. It requires technical knowledge, patience, problem-solving, and the tolerance for failure and iteration. Every time a builder diagnoses a boost leak, recalibrates a fuel map, or successfully installs a larger intercooler and watches the car perform better as a result, they're experiencing real competence, not simulated achievement. Not a notification on a screen. Real feedback from a physical system. Autonomy. The Supra platform gives its owner near-total creative control. There is no prescribed path. You choose the power level, the aesthetic, the suspension setup, the transmission, the sound, the car becomes a direct expression of your technical philosophy and aesthetic sensibility. That degree of self-determination is rare. Relatedness. The community that formed around the Supra is unusually cohesive. Forums, local meets, online build threads, these create genuine connection around shared technical challenges and shared admiration for well-executed work. The social currency isn't money or status. It's knowledge, execution, and respect for the craft. This is why Supra culture attracts a specific psychological profile. Engineers, entrepreneurs, people who approach complex problems methodically and find satisfaction in systems that reward precision. The car doesn't appeal to those who want instant gratification. It appeals to those who distrust it. There is also something worth examining in the concept of earned performance versus purchased prestige. Both are real human motivations. Neither is morally superior, but they produce different psychological experiences and, in the world of car culture, they define distinct tribes. When someone buys a new supercar, they are acquiring performance. The result is immediate and the transaction is clean. There is genuine pleasure in this aesthetic pleasure, sensory pleasure, the pleasure of ownership. But the car doesn't change in relationship to the owner's effort. It doesn't reveal more of itself the more you understand it. The Supra offers a different contract. The car's potential is latent, not delivered. To access it, you have to work. You have to develop technical fluency. You have to invest time, not just money. And when the car performs, when it does something extraordinary, the satisfaction is compounded by authorship. You built that. You understood the system well enough to improve it. That is a qualitatively different experience from acquisition. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent his career studying the conditions that produce what he called flow, the state of complete absorption in a challenging and meaningful activity. He found that flow emerges when the difficulty of a challenge is closely matched by the skill of the person attempting it. Too easy, and there is boredom. Too hard, and there is anxiety. In the space between, there is something close to transcendence. Mechanical work, for the right person, is a reliable generator of flow. The diagnostic process, the iterative problem solving, the physical engagement with a complex system. For Supra builders, especially those working alone, late at night, in garages that nobody else sees, this isn't a hobby. It's a form of meditation with mechanical feedback. Narrative identity theory, developed by psychologist Dan McAdams, proposes that human beings construct their sense of self through the stories they tell about their lives. Formative experiences, significant objects, turning points, these become chapters in an ongoing personal narrative that defines who we are and where we're going. For many Supra enthusiasts, the car entered their lives at a specific, psychologically potent moment: adolescence, early adulthood, the period when identity formation is at its most active. The car became associated with aspiration, with the idea of becoming someone capable and skilled. It entered the narrative. This is why grown men feel something genuine when they see an A80 on the street. It's not purely nostalgia, though nostalgia is part of it. It's recognition of a formative symbol, an object that was present or that represented something during a period of intense self-construction. The car doesn't just look like a car, it looks like a version of themselves they were once working toward. This also explains the depth of the reaction to the A90 Supra, introduced in 2019. The new car is, by objective metrics, excellent. It is fast, refined, and well-engineered. But it arrived with a BMW powertrain, a development partnership that the purist community received with something between skepticism and grief. Understanding that reaction requires understanding what the original Supra symbolized. The A80 wasn't just a product. It was an argument that a Japanese manufacturer could engineer something so fundamentally sound that it could be reborn through the knowledge of its community. The 2JZ's strength felt like a gift from Toyota's engineers to Toyota's enthusiasts. When the A90 arrived with a different engine architecture, one less amenable to community-driven transformation, it disrupted that symbolic contract. This wasn't irrational. It was the logic of narrative identity protecting something meaningful. The resistance wasn't about horsepower. It was about authorship. The tension between purists and modern reinterpretations is, at its core, a tension between two different relationships with time. The purist is invested in what the car meant, its historical identity, its cultural weight, the specific set of values it embodied. The modernist is invested in what a car can do now, the performance available through contemporary engineering, the relevance of a living nameplate. Both positions are psychologically coherent, both reflect something true about how human beings relate to objects that carry meaning. What makes the Supra unusual is the degree to which it has sustained that weight of meaning across generations of people who never owned one, many of whom never will. The legend persists because legends don't require possession, they require identification. And the story of the Supra, the endlessly buildable engine, the car that rewarded knowledge, the machine that was more potential than product, is a story that resonates with something deep in the human preference for earned outcomes over given ones. There is a final observation worth making, one that sits underneath everything else. The people who love the Supra most are not, generally, people who love things easily. They are people who respect difficulty, who are suspicious of things that offer too much without asking anything in return, who believe, at some level, that the value of something is inseparable from what it costs you, not in money, but in attention, in time, in the willingness to be ignorant before you become knowledgeable. The Supra asks something of its owner. It asks for engagement. It asks for patience with a process that doesn't resolve quickly or cleanly. It offers nothing to the person who wants to be done. It offers everything to the person who wants to go deeper. That is not a feature of the car's engineering, though the engineering enables it. That is a feature of the relationship between a particular type of person and a particular type of challenge. The Supra became a legend not because it was the fastest, or the most beautiful, or the most technologically advanced car ever made. It became a legend because it was honest. It told the truth about what was possible, and it left the rest to you. They don't love the Supra because it's perfect. They love it because it asks something of them. And in a world that increasingly offers shortcuts, simulations, and pre-assembled answers that ask simple, mechanical, and completely serious, feels like something worth answering.